think I want to nominate this award to my Reformed Orthodox Rabbi Bill Clinton. Thank you, everybody.
Elden Ring has set a standard for modern gaming, a standard that needed to be set and one that I hope other games live up to. It is rare for a game to rise up through the ranks, surpass its hype, and continue rising from there, and Elden Ring has done just that. Most games tend to die out after a few months, and while I can't deny that Elden Ring has died out somewhat, it is still being talked about constantly. Elden Ring has seen the most success out of any of the Souls games so far. It has truly become something massive. The sheer magnitude of Elden Ring and its effects on gaming and its own community are insane. Well, insane considering what it was put up against and what came before it. Each of the previous Souls titles had their own effects on the gaming scene, and I would like to talk about all of them individually. Just as a heads up, I will be skipping over Bloodborne and Sekiro. I love those games, but due to their more niche styles, I will be excluding them from my analysis. I will also be skipping over Dark Souls 2, as I personally believe that it hasn't affected gaming in any super specific way that Dark Souls didn't already do. Anyways, let's do a little time traveling. We need to go back to another game in FromSoft's lineup, one from many years ago, and that game is Kingsfield. Just kidding, we're not going back that far. I would be crazy to even consider that, but the game we really need to go back to is Demon's Souls. Demon's Souls was From Software's first delve into the Souls formula. It set up everything that would go on to be used by the series, making it the father of Dark Souls. Although it's a great game, Demon's Souls is held back by a few things. For one, it is a console exclusive, being limited to the PS3 and PS5 depending on which version you play. This is pretty harmful for its playability, especially if you want to play the true original and don't already own the PS3. The other thing holding it back is how short it is. Playing through the game for the first time doesn't seem so short, but trust me, on a replay, the game just breezes by. Demon's Souls is a short but sweet experience, paving the way for the Souls series to run with the ideas it presented. Without it, there wouldn't be a Souls series to go to, or at least not the one we have now. Moving a couple years into the future, Dark Souls 1 released to critical acclaim. It was the first Souls game to really get out there and be played by a wide audience. Its reception among players and critics alike was overwhelmingly positive. Dark Souls was identified to not only be a game, but also an art form. It sparked a huge wave of memes and references that have stuck around since its release. Praise the Sun and The Dark Souls of being two of the most well-known pop culture references to the game. Dark Souls defined an entire genre of gaming and helped create an entirely new genre, which is the Souls-like. How many other games can you say really invented an entirely new genre, especially one that's named after it, because there really aren't that many. Dark Souls 1 has had a huge effect on gaming, although it is one of the less played games in the series, which to me is surprising. Or at least it would be if I didn't realize that millions of players just started playing last year and are working their way back through the series. From what I've seen, the most common start for these new players is Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 has been, and likely will continue to be, the most influential Dark Souls for players getting into the series. Dark Souls 3's player base is the highest by far, with many players starting with Dark Souls 3 before moving on to other Souls games. Dark Souls 3 has been regarded as the easiest in the series, and also perfects what the previous titles presented for the series mechanically. The combat is faster with more variety and viability. The bosses are all unique and challenging experiences with high memorability and importance to the lore. The areas and story all come together to make for one of the best games in the FromSoft lineup. And in my opinion, it also makes for the most accessible and well-rounded game in the entire series. It's not too easy, but it's also not extremely hard, which is a statement that I understand and also believe is up for debate. Dark Souls 3 has sold millions of copies worldwide. It is the Dark Souls many people go to when they say which Souls game is their favorite. Dark Souls 3 has been the inlet for the series for many people, and I'm glad it has been. As much as I hate knowing people are coming in at the end of the series, I'm at least glad that they're playing the older games. Each of the Souls games has had its effect on gaming, and while Dark Souls and Dark Souls 3 really take the cake in that regard, Elden Ring goes above and beyond all of it, taking all of the aspects of the series and bringing it to a standing perfection. The Souls series effects on gaming have been huge, but I personally believe Elden Ring outshines all of that. Elden Ring has been many players' first experience with FromSoft's Souls series. Whether that be from the hype or just from people jumping into a new release is up to interpretation based on the sources you look at. Reddit is one of the most popular places for people to post about their experiences with the series, And looking at the various subreddits for the series, Elden Ring's subreddit by far has the biggest following out of them all, boasting a massive 1.7 million followers, which is more than double the amount of Dark Souls 3's sub, which currently stands at 543,000 members. It is a culmination of newcomers and veterans to the series, with several thousand posts from players discussing how Elden Ring was their first Souls game. Many of these posts discussing their feelings on the game as newcomers and how they mostly all love the experience. Outside of Reddit, the reaction from gamers worldwide has been massive. People everywhere throughout 2022 have talked about their love for the game. There have been several YouTube videos about the subject being made by newcomers to the series. People are making their online careers from Elden Ring, and that is amazing to see, especially currently. Players like Let Me Solo Her have made huge waves in the community and have gotten attention from Bandai Namco and FromSoft themselves. The growth in the Souls community over the last year has been amazing. I have loved seeing people's reactions to Elden Ring, and reading through the posts they have made just warms my heart. The hype for Elden Ring is something that I believe encouraged a lot of new players to try the game out. Elden Ring has had some of the most hype I've ever seen for a game in my entire life. I personally see it in the same hype bracket as the old Call of Duty and Halo titles. Although you really have to go super hard with the hype to match COD or Halo because wow, the hype for those back in the day was intense. Elden Ring was talked about day in and day out by fans after its initial announcement at E3 in 2019. The Elden Ring subreddit had even been made a month beforehand due to some leaks about the game before the event. People in the sub talked about what Elden Ring might be, what its story might be, who its characters were, and how that all fit together. They all clung to this idea of a game that didn't exist and wouldn't exist for years. Around the same time, a YouTube channel was made that was dedicated to sharing daily news for Elden Ring. No news about Elden Ring ever really came out until 2021, so the channel had to be very creative with its videos. The channel eventually collaborated with many prominent Dark Souls YouTubers to discuss possible news updates in the future. All of this built up an overwhelming amount of hype that didn't really slow down until Elden Ring released, and then it just started back up again and has been going strong ever since. The hype for Elden Ring carried with it promises of an amazing game, a perfect game even. A game that hopefully could live up to the hype that was made by the community, and luckily in Elden Ring's case, it did. In terms of modern gaming, many people aren't so fond of how things are going, with things like battle passes, unfinished or poorly made games, seasonal monetization, and microtransactions being all too common in games nowadays. With all of that said, it's no surprise that people want to change. Elden Ring has come in and set a new standard for games going forward. Elden Ring, among other games, have all shown that things do not have to be this way. There's no real need for immortal games, which are games that live well past their due date due to forced updates and lazy seasonal releases. I am looking right at you, Destiny 2, you better clean your act up. Games like Elden Ring are more focused on telling their story and being enjoyed by the people who play it, with the developers moving on to work on other projects that they want to work on, diversifying their experiences and growing as a team. Things do not have to be the way that they are, and Elden Ring is a shining example of that. Real care needs to be put into games, and with the wide success of Elden Ring, there is an obvious standard that has been set for how to do that. Sadly, this standard will likely not be met by games in the future, considering how much money the other methods make. But it will be nice to see if any big developers end up following in FromSoft's footsteps and make improvements to their games going forward. There's an obvious need for quality over quantity, and now is the time more than ever to see it happen. Elden Ring's impact on the gaming scene over the last year alone has been massive. It was the second best-selling game last year, falling just behind Modern Warfare 2. It has become a staple of modern single-player gaming, with many people trying single-player games out for the first time in years or for the first time ever because of it. Elden Ring has become a topic of global discussion, which has kept up since its release almost 1 year ago. It is one of the few games that lived up to its hype and even surpassed it in some ways. There was a dip in players and attention a couple months after its release, but even with that, it still had people raving over it, talking about it daily and trying the game out for the first time. Elden Ring exploded again as fans around the world voted for it in several award categories and cheered as it won Game of the Year. The weight that it now has on the industry, the pressure it puts on other single-player devs, all of it makes Elden Ring something truly unique. Elden Ring is an example of what games should be. Even with its own set of flaws and issues, it still stands as one of the best games from the last decade, and it will likely go on to be one of the greatest games of all time. Elden Ring's hype and following was enough to cause other developers to delay their game releases in order to avoid competing with it, and that isn't something that regular games just do. Elden Ring is a love story between a game and its fans, a developer and their community. Elden Ring's only challenge now is the test of time, what it will be after years of people playing, years of updates, and a possible DLC in the future. FromSoft has other projects that they are working on, and I'm glad to see that they want to return to other projects that they left behind after finding success with the Souls series. We'll just have to see what happens in the future with it. Elden Ring has been a defining game for me. It helped me to remember what it felt like to start a Souls game from the beginning again. As a series veteran, it was enthralling all the way through. Seeing all of the mechanics from previous entries becoming perfected by Elden Ring was heartwarming, especially power stancing from Dark Souls 2 because that got done dirty. I still wish bonfire aesthetics were re-added in some shape or form though, because I still really miss them. I began my adventure with the series with Dark Souls 1 in 2016 right before Dark Souls 3 released. It helped me to distance myself from game devotion and bring variety to what I play, and I cannot be more thankful for that change in my life. Without it, I wouldn't have had the same taste as I do now, and I wouldn't have tried things that I felt were too hard for me. The Souls series has changed my life in a way, and I am so happy seeing the same change happening for players all over the world. So here's to Elden Ring. Here's to a game that has truly changed the world of gaming. Thank you to everyone who has kept Elden Ring going, and especially thank you to Miyazaki and From Software. The vision that Miyazaki has had for his games and his drive to see it done has crafted some of the most beautiful stories I have ever heard throughout the games I've played. Good luck to the FromSoft team in their endeavors, and good luck to all of you out there. I truly wish the best for all of you.